Almost done with this shit. I will say I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game. And I definitely think New Game Plus is also a crap ton of fun. Like, I honestly just feel like starting up even more playthroughs. It might take me a while to go through the other RPG character creation based games I want to play. Oh my god, I should totally play more of the Lethal RPG games again. Wait, no, wrong area. There are a few things I'm not very keen of. For the most part, the game is balanced in a sense that everything's easy enough that you could play solo frickin' Green Wizard and you'd still be fine. In fact, I'm pretty sure the new hardest... I wonder if I can control robots. Probably not. The game is slated to get an overhaul soon enough, where they change plenty of classes and plenty of things with stuff work, and I definitely do think the game is good, but it definitely can still be improved upon. That much is certain, I think. Anyway, I can't control them. Oh yeah, I meant to... it's too late, whatever. I'll roll with having a dinosaur friend. Okay, these guys are very easy, very weak. Which is a good thing. I will say, while I do like the harder challenge in New Game Plus, it is also more frustrating, but I definitely do think this is the definitive way to play the game with all the classes already at their max enhancement and everything is just way harder. Anyway, yeah, a solo challenge is where you start off the game by killing everyone in your party and leaving only one party member alive, and dealing with the rest of the game permanently that way. In the original NES version, the most popular solo run would be to do it with a white mage, but apparently the hardest one is with the monk. And doing that challenge using the monk is actually easier in Final Fantasy Renaissance, I think, because of the new things they added to pretty much all the classes. In fact, I'm almost certain the Green Wizard was intentionally made to be a joke, although I'd argue the Green Wizard probably isn't the hardest solo run to do. I think it might be Bard. That or Evoker, I don't know. I'm still not too familiar with those two classes. Oh, they can go really high, can't they? I'm pretty sure it's diminishing returns past 200. It's like, it's already not being all that, or who knows, maybe it's exponential. And actually, it's like, I don't see that much of a big difference between 100 and 200. But who knows, maybe the difference is like really big past 200 somehow. I have a feeling these guys can turn me into stone. Yeah, there's a few, it's faithful and that's cool, but there's definitely a lot of other places where I'd much rather it be not faithful. Cremate. That's weaker. and the dragons. Yeah, this guy's weaker than the dragon. And who cares? The control feature actually honestly sucks. And yeah, Bailey is very buggy. Yeah, the game still isn't as good, as polished with its code as the original NES. There's still a few glitches. Granted, it is still way less. But you know, it has to be pointed out. That's right, last waltz. Woo! Should have been called Death Waltz. So that could be a Toho reference. Woo! Death. Yeah, it's a good class, and honestly, I really don't like the Beastmaster. Initially, I thought it was pretty cool, but after going through a full playthrough with it, it's definitely not my favorite. And I'd argue I like the Green Mage even better. It's not a problem of balance, it's a problem of just me not liking the way they do things, I suppose. Hold. The V3's fucking spells are worthless. Let me try catching. Holy shit! I wasted a spell, but who gives a shit? When you have a blue dragon... Yeah, the Beastmaster is very strong, but... I don't know, I just don't like their playstyle. The fact that they can just insta-kill... And that's a base ability, catch is just a bonus. And honestly, it's not that great as a bonus. But yeah, as the guide I read pointed out, it's already pretty good even before class change. So the fact that it doesn't get much, while I think I missed something. I definitely missed something. I forgot about the cube. Where and how do I get the cube? Hey, you don't have harm. Oh sure, it's V3 that has it. She's kinda currently fucking stunned. What is I... Why did I make Emily punch? Whatever, the vampires are very weak. Why is everyone going after Bailey? Okay, holy shit, how do I get the cube? Let me go through a walkthrough. Man, I've been doing so well. Not needing a walkthrough. You're fucking kidding me? I forgot to talk to the robot. I'm fucking stupid. I'm just gonna spam repels on my way there.
Hello everyone, my name is Pixelriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. In today's episode, we're down here in a strip mine that
fucking damn it.
The Mushroom Island, where today, hopefully, fingers crossed,
I could have sworn I talked to the robot. Did I seriously just get the treasure and ignore the robot and just left?
Start constructing the slime farm itself. And number one is that I've upgraded to the most recent minor.
Dear God, my stupidity truly knows no bounds.
3 at the time of this recording, although I'm pretty sure that tomorrow we'll be getting 1.20.4 because there have been some changes to decorated pots that had a very minor issue with them. It was basically deleting items that were put in them if you reloaded your world. That should now have been fixed as of the time.
I have no other uses for money anymore at this point in the game.
In your Minecraft launcher, if you play Java Edition,
sure,
probably a good idea if you don't mess with decorated pots until you update the .4 release. But that also means the bat model has changed. If you were used to the little brown bats that used to fly around in caves, they are now
I will say after this
than they were before.
playthrough of New Game Plus, any further replays I do, I won't be recording anymore. I'll just be playing the game. I'll just be playing the game on my own at leisure at that point. I really don't think there's any point in recording any further. If you really want more, you can watch somebody else play it. Or, you know, even better, play it yourself! It's a fun game. And it's free! Provided you have a computer.
Also here around us, that means mobs will start to spawn where they are unable to spawn in a mushroom fields biome, and that is really the purpose of setting this farm up with a mushroom island nearby. You see, of all the environments in Minecraft, mushroom islands are one of those unique ones that has special properties, and we've discussed this in the previous episode about these biomes, but mushroom islands are not a place where hostile mobs can spawn. It's possible for phantoms to spawn in the sky above you since they don't require a surface block in order to spawn and they are kind of biome agnostic. But the only thing that can spawn in a mushroom island biome is mushrooms, as long as there are mycelium blocks present. And in this case, this allows us to do some pretty spectacular stuff with spawn-proofing an area of a mob farm. Because normally if you want to do some hostile mob spawning, you have to be very specific about how you set up various aspects of your world. You have to make sure that there is no spawnable space nearby in order for hostile mobs to generate. And most of the time that's easy enough, right? You're generating mobs up in the sky in a mob spawner, or you're standing in the sky with the mob spawner closer to the surface, and you just go and AFK in an area where there is no terrain around except for the platforms of your mob farm. We've done that before in the farm where we generated a bunch of hostile mobs and we get our gunpowder, string, bones, and everything else from that farm. In the case of slime, though, we cannot really do that around here because slimes spawn in cave layers. So when you start digging around in your world, when you start going caving, you will occasionally find slimes spawning below the 40 coordinate on the y-axis. Everything from 40 down to bedrock at -64 is a spawning environment for slimes in specific chunks. And if you want to, if you have access to your world seed and you have permission to do this, if you're playing on a multiplayer world, you can load that seed into Chunkbase or some other kind of tool which will tell you where the slime chunks are in your world. But I've decided to take a slightly different approach to that here because I recognise that there are some people who don't have access to their world seed. If you play on a multiplayer server where the seed isn't known, because that would give people with Chunkbase the opportunity to find structures and stuff that normally players would have to search for in survival mode, then it makes sense that you're not going to have access to the world seed, and therefore finding slimes is going to be difficult. Finding the exact chunk in which slimes spawn can be a challenge. Fortunately enough, we've noticed a few slimes spawning around here, and if I press F3 and G to load up the chunk borders, it is a fair assumption, given the amount of slimes that were spawning around here, to guess that this right here is a viable chunk for slimes to spawn in. But we're going to set up a couple of things just to verify that a little bit once we've dealt with these slimes in here, because I want to craft some fences to fence off each of the chunks in here individually, and the slimes won't be able to hop over those fences, which will pretty much guarantee that they are spawning in the chunk that we find them when we return down here. But not every chunk of the world can spawn slimes. That's the most important factor here. Aside from the biome considerations, there is also a distribution consideration, because there are only, I think, 1 in 10 chunks of the world are slime chunks, so you do have to dig around for quite a while in order to find them, and I've been digging around the exterior of this mushroom island for a little while. As you can see, large areas that are dug out, and I've just stacked up chests with all of the resources that I've acquired from this, so that we can use the stone and everything a little bit later. But that is just for the slimes that spawn in cave layers, because there is actually one other place we know of that slimes can be reliably spawned, and that is, of course, over here in a swamp biome. You'll find slimes spawning on the surface in a swamp biome, so you don't have to go into cave layers, which makes swamp biome slime farms another viable possibility. There are a couple of reasons I'm not starting this out by building a slime farm in a swamp biome, though. And once again, one of those considerations has to do with the availability of this biome on multiplayer servers. Considering that 1 in 10 chunks is potentially a slime chunk,
chance of
it is a
failing.
lot more
I'll take
likely
those
that
odds.
you'll be able to find a
You know,
slime chunk that nobody
Haven't
knows
failed a dance in quite a while. I want to see how much it
The
increases
only swamps available
when that
to us
ability
would
activates.
be thousands of blocks away, or they could already be claimed building it by another player. Size is another factor as well, because I've seen some swamps in some worlds that are remarkably small. I have a pretty large one here, so we could come back and set
Oh
up
shit,
slime
that
farms
sucks.
in the future. There's also a little bit of hilly terrain around here, which means even if we are AFK
Oh,
in
wow.
the sky in order to generate slimes, we might have to do a little bit of spawn grouping around the outside. And the other factor, of course, is moon phase, because when there is a new moon, when the moon is fresh rising in the sky and you cannot see any of the white surface of the moon, slimes will not spawn in swamp biomes at all. The slimes are actually that affected by the moon phase that they do not appear on the new moon, which means that for 1 day out of every 8, we won't get slime spawning here at all, and the farm effectively becomes useless for a day. Now, despite all of that, you can get some pretty decent results out of a slime farm in a swamp, so it is going to be worth considering later in this series. But for now, I'm going to focus on the Mushroom Island setup that I already have, because I've put a bunch of work into it already, and this is an example of a slime farm that you can set up basically anywhere. With the caveat, of course, that if you're setting it up anywhere other than with a Mushroom Island, you'll probably need to do a lot of mob-proofing around the area, a lot of lighting up of caves and surface, in order to make sure that this farm runs at maximum capacity. Anyway, I'm going to return to the Mushroom Island, and we're going to isolate that slime chunk. Then we're actually going to use a similar technique to what we used here in this mountain biome, where we dug a chunk all the way down to bedrock using mobs, because the best way to optimize this area for slime spawning is going to involve the same technique we've used here to dig out an entire chunk of terrain. I'm also going to go and repair my pickaxe in the meantime, because my Silk Touch pickaxe has taken the beating in the mining out of all of those blocks. But first, let's get back to the Mushroom Island and set up some fences in my strip mine. Alright folks, so back here underneath the Mushroom Island in our little dig site, I have made sure the ceiling is 3 blocks high. That is about the amount of space a slime needs to spawn. As we've seen already, we did get some slime spawning down here, but what I've done is roped off
My goodness.
each of the 3 chunks where these slimes could potentially be generated. Right here we do have a deep frozen ocean area in this chunk, but it starts to turn into mushroom field after only 3 or 4 blocks on this side of the chunk border, so this would not really be a particularly viable place in which to spawn slimes, even if it was a slime chunk, because half of it being mushroom fields means we're only going to get slime spawning on the very edges of these blocks here, whereas all of these, I believe, are completely in the frozen ocean biome. We don't have a single block of mushroom fields anywhere in here, which is ideal. Unlike other hostile mobs, slimes in cave layers can spawn in any light level. So the real trick here is making sure that the entire area is properly lit up. We don't have any areas where the light level dips down to 0, which can spawn zombies, creepers, etc. Then we simply have to exit the mine here, or alternatively back up into a corner and get far enough away from any other spawnable spaces, but it looks like the area around here is going to be large enough for us to do that. So instead I'm going to do it by flying up into the air. And once we get
The
100
fuck
meters
out of there.
away from any hostile mobs that have spawned down there in cave layers, they will simply despawn, which gives more chance for slimes to spawn in one of the fence-off enclosures when we return to the dig area. And as we glide on down here past the beacon, we should hopefully see 1 or 2 slimes hopping around in these areas. If we don't, we simply fly away again and repeat this process. And second time's the charm, we have a slime trapped inside this fenced-off area, so that confirms that this chunk here is the slime chunk we want to be digging out. That means we can remove the rest of these fences, although it is always possible that we can get 2 slime chunks side by side, so you might potentially want to keep the fences up and try a couple more times, just in case you've got some spawn from the left-hand chunk and some still generating on the right. So maybe we'll do that just in case, but I'm fairly certain that this chunk that's in the middle of this chunk area here is the one we are going to dig out. Well, this seems to confirm it. We have a couple more slimes down here, but no slimes spawning in the chunk to the left, which means we just have the 1 slime chunk to dig out. So like I said, we can go ahead and remove the rest of the fences here so that we make sure that we are digging out specifically that chunk there, and we're going to dig the entire thing down to bedrock. But when I say the entire thing, I do mean the entire thing. We need to dig out everything above us as well, and that includes a bunch of water. So we are once again going to have to break out the second level sponges to make sure that we can dry out the area of ocean above us and dig a hole all the way down from the surface down to bedrock level. And that will allow us to explore some of the cool ways in which we can influence mob spawning on Minecraft Java Edition. I'm going to take my coordinates inside this chunk here so that I remember exactly where I need to
I'll go fight the first encounter.
on the surface, we're going to surround that with sand, then I'm going to dry it out with sponges, use moss to dig on down through here, and eventually we'll hit bedrock and we can start building the farm. Well, as with the Guardian farm, we're going to bring a lot of sand with us, and I believe this right here is the chunk that we need to be in. Yep, coordinates match, there we go. This time we're just isolating a 16 by 16 area, we're not doing an entire circular perimeter around it, so I've not brought a huge amount of sand, I've just brought 2 shelter boxes because this is still a deep ocean biome after all. We are going to find the outside corners of this
Decoy
chunk.
lasts
We're
way
going to
too
make
short.
sure that we place these blocks over the chunk border into the neighbouring chunks just to make sure we don't end up eliminating any spawning space inside of here. This also, by the way, confirms from the surface that this entire thing is an ocean chunk. We don't have any blocks of the Mushroom Island biome involved here. Now, once we've established all 4 of these corners, I'm going to use the redstone assisted method for this again, simply because it's going to save us a bit of time. So we'll set up a couple of blocks either side of our sand here. We'll put a couple of pistons like so, a redstone dust here, a repeater on block standing on, and a redstone power source feeding into the repeater. Now when we place sand, we should have that automatically pushed by the piston, and if this second piston doesn't update the one below it, then we simply need to swap the position around and place it underneath. That should create a situation in which we can place a whole lot of sand blocks very, very quickly, making sure that there's no kelp underneath here, although it seems like there is no kelp generating in this part of the ocean biome since it's a frozen ocean. ocean. Once we're done with this technique, we should have a wall of sand all the way around here. We can divide the area up into 4x4 or 5x5 areas that we can simply dry out with sponges over. Well, that's close enough, and this time we didn't even have to worry about being lasered by any guardians. There is, by the way, an ocean monument somewhere around here, but hopefully it's not close enough that it's going to cause us any complications. It is sponge time, and we're going to approach this in much the same way as we have before. Simply dry out the entire thing all the way down.
Forbidden Spin
Grab
sucks.
the hoe out of my shulker box so that I can dip the wet sponges, and use torches to take down the sand balls connecting each of these dried out areas. And the main thing here is we won't be able to remove the perimeter wall of sand because that's what's holding the rest of the ocean. But this cleanup should not take long. And with this whole area completely dried out, we're going to start digging on down. And I'm actually going to do that without moss at first, simply so I can get hold of all of these blocks and take advantage of the fact that the beacon's radius still covers this chunk, so I still have that haste 2 effect refreshing. Once we get down to deep slate level, however, the haste 2 effect is not going to matter since we can't instant mine deep slate, so that is where the moss will come in. We'll bust out the hoe once again, and we'll moss line all the way down from about Y8, where the deep slate really starts, down to negative 64. And at this point, we are about halfway done. And down here at Y8, back in the middle of our strip line, everything above this has been done. That really didn't take too long, actually, because we only started from the ocean floor, so obviously while the sand is up there providing a decent chunk of height, we only had to dig down about 30 to 40 layers before we reached the area that I'd already dug out. So now, it's time to dig on down a lot further. But thankfully we have moss and a few composters to help us with that. I'm not going to worry about a laze this time. I am going to do all of the composting just through a couple of double chests of hoppers just to make sure everything is processed, and it shouldn't take too long to dig this out. Remember that last time we did this, we were starting at something like Y230, whereas now we are starting a little bit lower down without mining. So this should maybe take the rest of the afternoon, and then we can start building the slime. Although one thing to be aware of, if you hear the sound of bubbles whirling in the background, you can see the subtitles there as well. There may occasionally be flooded caves as we dig on down here because the ocean
Hello,
layers,
game.
the cave layers down here have a chance to be flooded just because they connect down into the ocean. So it's worth keeping some of those sponges we were using earlier on standby. And remember that we'll only have to section off areas that interact with this chunk. The rest of it, honestly, might be worth leaving flooded because there are going to be many fewer things that will spawn in an area that's flooded versus an area that's just a big dark cave. On the other hand, if we do run into any cave systems while we're digging down here, it's probably a good idea to go around and climb up, because that will save us the trouble searching for those caves when it comes to spawn-proofing any other spawn-proof space that is outside the radius of Monster Island. But as you can now see, I've got a lot of composting to do, so I'm going to set this up on one side just so that we can have a composter running while I do the rest of the moss layers, and I'll see you folks once we're done here. Okay, we are all done with our moss mining project. We are at the level here where we have hit bedrock. There are still a couple of ores in the walls which I would like to take out, and to be honest, I'm considering replacing the entire walls here with blocks of moss, considering that I have a ton of moss in storage from my moss mining chunk, and the green really fits the vibe of a slime farm, so I might do that a little bit later. But I want to show you a little bit more about the philosophy of building this on a mushroom island, and exactly why this is going to help us get the best spawn rate possible out of this farm. So I'm going to get rid of these diamond ores here, or we'll put another little layer down here. In the process of digging this chunk out, I also got another stack. All of that is now sat in the shulker box here, where yes, we have a stack of deep slate diamond ores. We even ran into an area where I've been branch mining for diamonds down here previously when I first moved the beacon down to deep slate level, just to help us mine out a little bit faster, though it's not instant. And we've got more bone meal than we started with here in the composter. So the next thing I really want to do is show you folks how
they're actually very weak.
will end up spawning in here, or how quickly the spawns will happen. And unlike our hostile mob farm, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's not really possible for us to just fly up into the sky to get slimes to spawn down here. Well, it kind of worked actually. We have a couple of large slimes down there just kind of bopping around, and it may be that there are fairly few other spawnable spaces around here, but remember that spawning happens in a 128 block spherical radius away from the player. So right here we're actually less than 128 blocks away from that final block down there, because bedrock starts to generate negative 58 on the y-axis, and we're at 64, so we'd have to be a few blocks further up for those slimes to disappear entirely. But on the way down here, there are probably going to be other caves and other spawnable spaces in which hostile mobs can generate, so we might need to go around into a few other chunks in this area and light them up. But if we were to AFK at this level, we'd also be generating stuff in the icebergs around us, because during nighttime, these will all become spawnable spaces. Packed ice, blue ice, and snow blocks are all solid blocks on which mobs can spawn. They will not spawn on regular ice because that's a transparent block, but a lot of these packed ice icebergs still become spawning spaces for hostile mobs during the right conditions. And we want to take advantage of the Mushroom Island being here, the fact that we'll get 0 hostile mob spawns in there, so we're going to choose an AFK spot, a place to stand where the farm can operate, but where we are surrounded by the terrain of the Mushroom Island. We can't do that on the surface really, because of course the radius is spherical, so the further away we stand on the surface over here, the more likely it is that we won't get any spawns in here at all, because we'll be too far away on a diagonal. So we're going to pick an AFK spot that is slightly closer to our slime chunk here. We're going to hop back into the confines of our strip mine. I've actually cut out a little dugout in the wall and tested whether or not we still load the slime chunk from there. This is only really going to be possible to show you with the assistance of a second account logged in spectator mode. So I'm going to open my world to the local area network, enable any accounts that log in to join us in spectator mode, and I'll get my camera account in here to show you what I'm up to. Because this little tunnel I've cut away into the wall here puts me 128 blocks away from the blocks on the far side of that slime chunk. So we are still loading everything up to the back wall of the slime chunk as we are here. And if I log in with my camera account, we find that, oh, it's nighttime, so a lot of other mobs are spawning down there, but look how many mobs are spawning in such a small space. Once again, these are the kinds of rates that we typically only see from a hostile mob farm, and that is a couple of slimes spawning in there alongside all of the other creepers, skeletons, and everything else. Well, I'm going to make sure that I sleep for the night, and I'm actually going to dig a little bit further down this tunnel so that the rest of the mobs in that chunk will despawn, and we'll just be left with an environment that spawns slimes for us. And there we go. As we can see, a few of the mob drops are still left around from the mobs that burned before I did that, but nothing is spawning in that area. Now, if I head back down the tunnel to about here, just past this gold ore, back to the camera account, you'll notice that there's a slime spawning down there, maybe a little bit further
Actually
along,
go inside this
slightly
place.
closer to the chunk, and yes, there we go, we're getting a bunch of slimes.
I didn't.
3 large slimes has already made it in here, and there's a couple more other slimes spawning as well. And that's not even taking into account the fact that behind some of these walls there may be some other caves which we will need to light up to optimize the spawning rate inside of here. So why are slimes spawning here so fast? The fact that we're standing in a chunk completely surrounded by mushroom islands is one factor, but that's not the only thing going on here. The reason we have dug out this entire chunk in order to spawn slimes is not just because we can maximize the area in which the slimes will spawn. It all has to do with height-based mob spawning, which is a concept that is really exclusive to Java Edition, so apologies to the Bedrock Edition players. Unfortunately, that's not something we can take advantage of in Bedrock. But in layman's terms, the way Minecraft Java Edition calculates mob spawns is from the bottom of the world to the top. It will search for any valid spawnable blocks from this lowest area of the world where we can have mob spawning.
Golden Axe.
It's
a video game reference, probably.
Once it finds the topmost block in a chunk and decides whether or not it's going to spawn anything there, the game resets this spawn cycle and starts from the bottom of the world again, gradually going up towards the top. So that process can reset even faster if we lower the overall height within the chunk. If we make sure that there are no blocks higher up for the game to check, it will simply reach the top of whatever set of platforms we set up here for slimes to spawn, realise that that's the highest block in the chunk, and immediately start spawning stuff at the bottom of the farm again. And so while we could fill this entire chunk with spawning platforms for slime everywhere between here and Y40 would be valid spawnable spaces for cave slimes, it actually makes sense for us to only install a few platforms down here and just rely on them spawning slimes as quickly as possible. The higher up we build in this chunk, the slower spawns will actually be towards the bottom, because the game will have to keep checking further and further up in the chunk. In the case of the hostile mob spawner we built a little while ago, we were able to isolate spawns on the platforms we built by AFK in the sky, basically allowing stuff to spawn on those platforms because it was the only valid spawnable space. If we had the opportunity to build a hostile mob farm down here, somewhere around the boundary of this mushroom island, the spawns would be lightning fast. We'd be able to clear the platforms off a lot more quickly because the mob camp would fill up very, very fast. So that's the reason behind digging out this entire chunk. It's not just to have access to the layers on which slimes will spawn, it is so we can maximize the spawn rates inside this farm and get a whole bunch of slime in a relatively short amount of time. So I'm going to take down all of the composting stuff that I've been using to compost the moss, and we're going to build up a series of platforms on which the slimes will spawn. But first, since we're at bedrock and we know we can't dig any deeper, we're going to set up the mechanism which is going to kill the slimes after they're done spawning, and that's going to require a little bit of extra preparation. If we're going to be spawning slimes down there super quickly, we also want a mechanism that can get rid of them super quickly. And sometimes mobs in Minecraft will take a little while to die if we're, say, luring them onto campfires or something like that. And so we're going to take an alternative method to this, where we're actually going to send the slimes through to the nether. Thanks to the amount of obsidian I was able to collect from
Really don't have much point exploring anymore.
But with each of these platforms we're going to set up, we're going to have a large portal that will basically cover the entire width of the chunk. And now
maybe I should just save myself the time and the resources and just
transported to the nether. We'll hop out into
I don't think there's anything good here. I guess there's the mithril, but I don't need it. I believe it's on the left side.
Recognize that there is space for it to spawn some more slimes and generate some more.
The mithril is here.
We'll need a bunch of campfires in order to kill the slimes once they're in the nether. In fact, we're probably going to use soul campfires because they're that bit faster. With a handful of those, the only other thing we will need is some iron blocks and some carved pumpkins, because we're going to be luring the slimes towards these portals using iron golems. And I'll bring a couple of shelter boxes of moss so that we can use those to decorate the walls of the farm. I think we're just about ready to head back over there, so let's return to the Mushroom Island and talk about the killing mechanism. I'm going to stash the obsidian away in this shelter box for now, because the first thing we need to do is layer up this floor by one block. Unfortunately,
to be honest, I'm not really using the power ring, am I?
We're at right now, negative 59, because
Power glove, rather.
It is not spawnable. It is effectively, the game sort of treats it like a transparent block. It just is not spawnable for hostile mobs. So we need to make sure, in order to take full advantage of the lowest possible spawning area in this chunk, that the floor is made out of some sort of solid block. In fact, to conserve materials, it might be a good idea to make this floor out of slabs. And alongside that, mobs will typically choose to pathfind towards solid blocks before they will choose to pathfind towards slabs. So if we use slabs as the platform here, it's actually more likely that the slimes will immediately want to start pathfinding towards all the solid blocks
Oh
around.
damn,
We could in
really has
theory
more
make this
absorb.
even more effective by removing the layer of solid blocks below these slabs, but by that point the slimes will have targeted the iron golems anyway, so there isn't much point in putting in the extra effort. Now with this floor of slabs in place, we're going to return to the obsidian that's going to form the portals around each side here, and of course we're going to have to make each of these at least 3 blocks high, with the blocks of the portal frame starting at the same level as this floor of slabs, so that the slimes will simply be able to waltz in at floor level. We're going to make sure...
Okay, well, good thing I already opened. Make sure each of these portals actually shares a corner block right there, so that's going to be the pillar that supports both this portal here and this portal on this side. And in the centre of the portal, we're going to dig out a 2-block wide alcove, which an iron golem is going to be standing in. We want to make sure the iron golem show up now, Warmack.
some fences in order to hold it back. And initially, we will need to dig this alcove out a little bit more to make sure that the iron golem can spawn in here with the T-shape being 3 blocks wide, and that it won't suffocate by spawning in the blocks behind it, which does happen sometimes. So we're going to place a pumpkin on the top there, we're going to shear that, and yep, it looks like it's suffocating in these blocks immediately in front of it at first. There we go. We can push it over slightly, grab a bit more deep slate to fill up this recess in the wall, and the iron golem should be stored here in in this
Alright, they're
item
pathetic.
space. This iron golem is bait to lure the slimes in, and if we break out a couple more blocks to either side, like so, the slimes will be able to see the iron golem a little bit better. Line of sight is the important thing here. Can a slime that spawns right here see this iron golem and be tempted to pathfind towards it, or will it end up seeing the iron golem on this side? We can carve away the walls behind here to make that slightly easier, as long as this enclosure doesn't let slimes in or the iron golem out. But the slimes going in there are going to be caught in the nether portal here anyway, and they'll be instantly transported to the nether. Unlike the player who always takes a while to generate in the nether, mobs will not find the same restriction applies to them. And down here in the bowels of this basalt delta, I guess, is where we're going to be setting up the killing mechanism for this farm. Only, we're not going to be setting up at this height, because this is a height of Y55, and that's potentially going to conflict with another nether portal we want to set up later. You see, with all of these portals being set up at Y-58, and we're going to have portals on all four sides here, we need to make sure that each of those portals matches exactly to the one in the nether. We're going to take the median coordinates of all of them, so we're actually going to use the blocks in the center of this space to calculate the coordinates of the portal we need to make in the nether, which according to my calculations is going to be at -607 and -269. So we're going to go in there with a bunch of obsidian and make a portal that links up to this one and the other three around the perimeter of this chunk. Now we're going to aim to do that as low down in the world as possible, so this is potentially going to be dangerous territory considering we are digging down through a basalt delta into what looks like a bottomless lava lake. Yeah, -607, -269 is directly under this, so I'm going to go get some fire resistance potions. Okay, so I found a decent landmass where I could dig down through lava lake level in the nether. We are down here at the bottom of the nether, basically where bedrock starts to generate. We're at Y5 right now. Didn't find any light debris, unfortunately, but in this room, we are going to be suspending a nether portal centered on the coordinates that we took earlier, -607, -269. We're going to make sure that this is at least 3 blocks off the ground, though, because we need to set up a series of things around here that are going to both kill the slimes and collect their drops. So we need to make sure that this one starts up here. We're going to leave a 3-block gap and then begin our obsidian for the portal frame here. I basically made this 9 blocks wide, and the moment of truth comes when we light this with a flint and steel. Hopefully we should return to the coordinates of our slime farm. There we go, and be back by our iron golem. Now let me step on through this portal one more time, just to make sure that is linked to the one at the bottom of the nether.
I forgot
There should be no problem to connect these, since the Y coordinates are going to match much more closely than the portal we generated there on the surface of the nether. Just to be 100% sure, I am going to go back and remove that surface and nether portal a little bit later, just to make sure that nothing interferes with the operation of this farm.
Yeah, I should have used anti-thunder.
This wall is now completely filled in with all of these leftover materials from digging out the basalt delta, and we can even cover up this pillar of the portal here, because we just want to make sure that the slimes, whenever they spawn in here, are immediately going to try and jump out of the portal, or jump into what's going to kill them, which in this case is going to be the soul campfires. But we're going to add another layer of stuff on top of that, just in case, because this portal is going to be loading and unloading the area around it quite frequently, and as a result, every time this portal loads, there is an additional chance that it can spawn a zombie piglin. And zombie piglins are going to be immune to damage from campfires, meaning that eventually a bunch of zombie piglins will just be hanging around in here, and their hitboxes can potentially block the slimes from jumping out of the portal. So we're going to lay in a layer of powder snow, which is going to prevent the zombie piglins from surviving in this farm, since they'll eventually take freezing damage and expire. That should be the case anyway, but before we go any further, we need to set up a couple of things. Using some of the iron I brought here to make iron golems, we are still going to have to make a bunch of hoppers to go underneath where the farm is built in the nether, since we need something to collect the drops from below the soul campfires. And it is possible to just limit it to one side, so the slimes are going to jump out on one-pan hoppers, and you end up limiting the amount of materials that you spend on this farm. But I think we're going to do it on both sides, just so the slimes have more room to jump, and that should hopefully clear them out of this space a little faster. Then we're going to add our soul campfires on top of this, making sure that we don't take too much damage by stepping on them now. ourselves, and then we're going to return to base to resupply and pick up some powdered snow. To obtain the powdered snow, we'll need to bring a bunch of buckets and a couple of shulker boxes. 6 buckets of anything, including powdered snow, cannot be stacked, so you can only have 27 per shulker box. And I'm pretty sure up here on the slopes of my meadow is a patch of powdered snow that I've run into once or twice. It's usually fairly easy to spot, has a slightly different, more grainy texture than regular snow, and you start to sink into it. That frosty vignette pops up and you'll start to take freezing damage if you stand in it for too long. We're going to right click on it with a bucket to obtain some, and we're going to take a bunch of these buckets back over to our slime farm in the nether, where some slimes have already made it through and started dying on the campfires, thanks to the fact that I loaded the farm chunks on the way back. And as you can see, one of them has jumped down the other side, so we can kill this one manually, and we should have a little bit of slime waiting for us here in the chest. Nice. So we can continue to fill up this pan of hoppers, making sure that all of the drops from this side of the farm go into a separate chest. I've crafted a bunch of soul campfires that we can place on top of here. We'll go out of the portal and then back through so that we can use the edge of the obsidian portal frame.
Victory is pretty much ours now.
From there, we're going to be placing buckets of powdered snow one at a time over top of the soul campfires. Now normally if a mob was on fire when it stepped onto powdered snow like this, it would end up destroying the powdered snow block, but I'm not certain that that happens to mobs that are being damaged by soul campfires, since the sprite of the mob itself isn't actually on fire when they're taking damage. The source of the damage is still, technically speaking, fire, but it's not setting the mob on fire to do it, so it'll be interesting to see if this actually works the way I expect. An additional benefit to this, though, is that the slimes will have a hard time jumping out of the powdered snow, so there is very little chance of them ending up going back into the portal after they've jumped down onto these campfires, which shouldn't happen anyway, since the campfires will deal enough damage to them that they won't really be able to move in the way they normally do. For now, though, let's head on back through to the overworld, where we want to set up one more thing that will make sure this farm runs efficiently, and that is a spot for us to AFK at this level of the farm. And for that, we need to make sure we know the coordinates of this portal, and then we need to head south back towards the direction of our mushroom island, and we want to set up an AFK spot that is going to stand the player 127 blocks away from the portal on that back wall of the farm. The portal there has a coordinate of negative 2160, so somewhere around the 2040 range should be adequate. And if we look down there, I think I can already see a couple of slimes generating, along with some skeletons and stuff, because it's actually nighttime on the surface right now. So if nothing else,
you know, I actually never completed the quest for the Dark Knight. What does it do anyway? Is it even worth it?
Eventually, these nether portals giving off their own light should end up lighting up most of the farm, but you need to make sure the central blocks here are lit as well, so place a few torches around the perimeter, and that should prevent any mobs that aren't slimes from spawning in this space. But here is one of the clever aspects of this farm, because we're now going to head all the way down to the end here, where our AFK spot is going to be. We're going to set up a nether portal.
What would tanking 1,000 damage do for the Dark Knight?
Through to the nether on the other side, because that way we can set up a nether portal from our AFK spot to the collection point of the slime farm. And hopefully these coordinates should match up so that it doesn't end up connecting to the portal that's actually in the slime farm, it just connects to this portal here. We will need to do a little bit of testing just to make sure this portal goes back and forth correctly. And yeah, it looks like the slimes have been able to come through here, so unfortunately we are going to have to adjust that slightly. That is the problem.
You know what, let's beat the game right here, right now. Misery, increasing their damage as their HP lowers. I see. Yeah, definitely don't need that. Especially not on this team, which does not have the best healing. If you want a Death Knight Hyper carry, then honestly, I do kind of have enough healing. Ebony and Mara are pretty good healers. Why would I Hyper carry?
Right now, it's actually been quite a bit, but with some clever matching of portal coordinates, it might be possible to create a nether portal that goes to the collection area of your slime farm without interfering with the running of the farm itself. For now, though, it simply seems too dangerous to attempt. I think what we'll do instead is have a bubble column that takes us to and from our AFK point in the overworld, and at the top of that bubble column we can leave a surface portal that leads to the surface in the nether with a ladder leading down to the slime farm outpost. I think that's probably the best way to approach.
Let's see if I remember the way.
Here, and that will ensure that we can set up a safe fall and a
Frost dragons.
But by now you know the theory, so I can build up the remaining portals around these four walls. We can start our next platform up here in order to have another spawning platform for the slimes. And we'll probably stack those 3 high so that we end up with 3 spawning platforms, all relatively low down to take advantage of that higher spawning rate that occurs at lower elevations. I might need to go and get some more obsidian from the end so that we can make a few more of these portals, but once that's done, we'll make sure that there is a portal in the overworld on the surface that connects to the surface on the nether, and both of those are connected to the AFK spot and the outpost of our slime farm. Then if I've got time, I'm going to turn the walls of all of this into moss, because I think having this entire chunk covered in green is going to be a pretty spectacular colour scheme. But that sounds like a task that I'll complete on the live stream, and so I'll see you folks on the other side. Hey folks, welcome back to my absolutely glorious slime farm chunk. I've gotten a decent amount of the walls up here covered in moss. I stopped basically at the edge of that strip-lined out area of line 8 where we began the deep slate portion of this, and we've covered the entire walls in moss blocks, which looks kind of hectic, but we're actually not going to be seeing too much of this farm anyway. I still think that turning the entire thing into effectively a tube of the same material is pretty cool. But we have all of our iron golems installed, and this is the topmost platform of what we have now. 5 platforms, each with their own set of nether portals and their own iron golems directing slimes through to that last spot in the nether. A couple of remedial things we had to do in the process of this, though. I realised that the zombie piglins that were spawning in these portals can actually get into here, and if they walked close to the iron golems would attack them. I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but I had a problem with the fact that the piglins were sometimes able to damage the iron golems.
Wow, these guys are incompetent.
At least once before they died, and that was causing some of our iron golems to break. You can repair an iron golem by right-clicking on them with an iron ingot, but what I did instead to resolve the issue overall was to put in these trapdoors here which prevent the piglins who are 2 blocks tall from walking any further towards the enclosure where the golem is. Here is an example of that actually. A piglin managed to spawn in this portal. It's trying to look towards the golem, and the golem is distracted by it, but since the golems don't need to do anything in this farm except stand there and allow slimes to be lured in towards them, the piglin and the golem are going to be absolutely fine here. The golem won't take any damage, and the piglin will eventually just despawn or walk back into the portal. But of course, this is a farm that we need to stand 128 blocks away from to really see it in action, so I'm going to bring my camera account back in so that you can see how fast the slimes actually spawn while we're standing over here at our AFK point. Speaking of the AFK point, I now have a
I guess
set up.
if I could say another thing, I kind of wish the game was a little longer. If possible, some extra content would be nice, so we could enjoy having end game content a little longer, because a lot of the new and most of the fun stuff in this game is saved for when all you have left is the final dungeon, located in the past.
Platforms are merrily spawning slime, and you won't find a ton of slime spawning on every single platform all of the time, but they're actually so quick in moving through the portals that there is a chance of a bunch of slime spawning and then not being there the next second you take a look. The longest the slime ever has to travel is if it spawns in the center of this platform and makes its way towards the nether portal, at which point it'll be through fair to say, I think, that the slimes are never going to fully occupy the mob camp. We don't really need to worry too much about adding additional platforms to this setup, increasing the height of the jump, because slimes can spawn anywhere between the bedrock level and Y40, and that's positive 40, not negative 40, by the way, so it should be possible to increase the yield of this slime farm if we ever feel like we need to. But to be quite honest, I don't know if we will need to, because this thing already produces a lot of slime on its own. Flipping back over to my main account here, I'm going to briefly go through to the Nether, which will allow my spectator camera account to teleport to the Nether as well. I'll show you the setup I have for collecting slime, and then you'll be able to see the farm in action. So this Nether portal over here teleports me to another location in the Basalt Delta, very close to the original portal that I had set up to go to the Mushroom Island. It's the one over there that the magma cube is currently standing on top of. But in the space behind this new portal, I dug a couple of tunnels directly downwards to see if I could find the space to access the farm output from. And, when you know, I came out exactly where I set up the Nether portal, where I initially tried to get access to the collection area of the farm. We don't have the Nether portal here. What we do have is a moss carpet on top of a powder snow. And powder snow actually breaks your fall in a similar way to how a bucket of water would, except you can place carpet on top of it and it will still break your fall. This might just be a Java edition thing, so exercise caution if you use that on Bedrock, but it's a really great way of having a safe fall into here. You don't actually fall into the powder snow block, you don't take any fall damage. Then we've got a ladder.
Wow, this is ending up to be an easier final dungeon. Oops, wrong person. Compared to my previous normal game playthrough.
Piglins will actually come through the Nether portal, will walk into the powder snow, will take frost damage since they can't take fire damage, and will be killed by the farm aggro.
Here come the gas dragons.
But the majority of the output from this farm is slime balls, and it is really good at what it does. Teleporting my camera account to here in this farm, I do have particles completely turned off, and unfortunately I'm still seeing a lot of the campfire smoke, but pretty soon it will be apparent as I go back to the farm in the overworld how much slime is going to come through that portal. Back here on the Mushroom Island, we're going to drop down the safe drop that I left for myself here, and I'm just going to stand in this spot waiting for some slime to spawn. Flip over into the camera account here in the Nether, and
Oh, that's so useful.
the slime spawning has already begun. The slimes come through.
Ow.
The 1s and 2s at first,
Unfortunately, their
and then
physical
the
attacks
2s
still suck.
They will actually push each other out of the Nether portal as well, and you'll see that some of the larger slimes occasionally have trouble getting into the spot where all the campfires are, but sooner or later, the other slimes will break down. They'll take enough damage that they break down into the smallest type of slime, and that's when they will drop slime balls. At this rate, I think I could probably fill up both double chests from empty if I AFK here for about half an hour. I will probably benchmark this farm at some point in future so that you can know the exact rates, but honestly, it is a very effective farm. And you might be wondering if you need a second account in the Nether to keep this farm loaded, and the answer to that is simply no. A Nether portal like this will load a 3x3 chunk area around it for about 15 seconds every time an entity comes through, and an entity is coming through pretty much constantly with this farm since the slimes are consistently showing up, so it really shouldn't be any kind of problem to have this farm loaded in single player with just your player in the overworld, because even without that, the slime balls have been accumulating here in the Nether. I've not really had my camera account logged in the Nether at any point in this other than this demonstration, and for the brief time I showed it on the live stream. So you can have my word on that, this slime farm is going to operate regardless of whether or not you have a player in the Nether or not. The one remaining aspect we do need to pay attention to, because this is still potentially a factor for the rates of the farm overnight, is the fact that we still have some icebergs out there in the frozen ocean, which can still count as spawning spaces while we're down here at the farm. I have a feeling that they won't be close enough to the player since we are down there at bedrock level and these are all on the surface. And as you can see, there's a creeper over there, there's a couple of other mobs out there in the bergs. I just looked directly at the Enderman, which is probably a mistake for the Enderman, not for me. I'm pretty good at taking on Enderman at this point. But I think it is safe to say that this is a pretty solid slime farm, and when we return to the Nether, those double chests we need emptying, turn all of the output into slime blocks, and in future episodes we're going to take a look at what slime blocks can do, because this is really going to be a turning point in the technology we can use in this world. And I've left myself a little bit of room down here so that we can add another double chest if we need to, but that is almost all. I reckon we're going to take a lot of this away right now. Alright, 2 gold ingots worth 4 gold nuggets, and over 9 stacks of slime blocks from that. I think that's pretty solid so far. We'll head back to the open world and we'll call it a day. Folks, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlrips. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.
Our base increased again. I mean, I suppose I'm basically asking for post-game content that's akin to Etrian Odyssey at this point. So who knows if I really want what I want.
This video was made possible by you. Every sale of our limited edition calendar supports what we do here at Quasquesart, and our brand new 2024 calendar is our most spectacular yet. Don't miss out on your chance to own a special piece of Quasquesart history. The universe is going to die one day, but how? Well, it turns out our cosmic fate will be decided by a fight between two titans. The two warriors deciding the fate of the universe. Our universe was born 14 billion years ago in the Big Bang and has been expanding ever since. For some reason, new empty space is being created out of nothing between galaxies. Space itself is becoming bigger. Will it go on forever, or will it stop one day? Today, we think the universe is at the mercy of two cosmic demigods fighting for dominance. The first one is all the stuff in the universe: galaxies, gas, dark matter. Well, they're very different. They just want to do one thing: get together. Matter is attracted by matter, pulled together by gravity. And gravity also pulls on the universe as a whole, slowing the expansion that started at the Big Bang. Our second warrior is empty space. While it seems, well, empty and powerless, empty space has an intrinsic energy. We don't really have an idea what this energy is or why it's there. It's really a placeholder that fills a blank in our understanding of reality. But it's got a cool name: dark energy. Dark energy pushes things apart, a sort of anti-gravity that accelerates the cosmic expansion. So, we have all the matter in the universe pulling in, and empty space infused with dark energy pushing out. Whoever wins will kill the universe in fun ways. But who will win? It all depends on the mysterious dark energy. Will its strength stay the same, a common assumption just because it keeps our models simple? Or will it get weaker? Or will it get more powerful over time? 1. Constant dark energy, heat death. If the strength of dark energy stays constant, it will win the war. Since space is growing, matter is getting more and more diluted, like sugar in a cup being filled with more and more tea. But as the universe expands, new empty space is created, which brings more dark energy, which pushes everything apart even more, which creates more empty space, which makes the universe grow even faster. A feedback loop that will make the universe expand at an exponential rate. Every 12 million years or so, it will double in diameter, forever. But while dark energy is winning the war, matter is winning at least one battle. At short distances, it can keep things together. Local galaxy bubbles can overcome the push of dark energy. In a few billion years, our local group of galaxies will merge into a gigantic ball with trillions of stars. It will soon become our last view of the cosmos. All other galaxies will be pushed away by the expansion. For us, it will look like the rest of the universe is rushing away, until in a few 100 billion years, we won't see other galaxies at all. We'll be alone, surrounded by a seemingly infinite dark void. In about 100 trillion years, all the stars of our supergalaxy
Ooh, I'm so glad.
all gas that can create new stars has been consumed, and no new gas can come in. The galaxy will be dark and filled with stellar corpses. Over quadrillions of years, white dwarfs and neutron stars will slowly cool until becoming truly dark, turning off the last lights of the universe. All structures, big and small, will slowly dissolve. One by one,
Useless.
all dead stars and planets will leave the supergalaxy, which slowly dissolves over 6 stillions of years. Every object will end up on its own, which means that dark energy takes over again, creating more and more empty space between everything. Objects will be so far apart that it will be as if each had a universe for itself. Not much happens
here we
anymore
go.
until in a good long years, all black holes will have evaporated. In the end, entropy and dark energy won't stop until their job is finished. Over time spans, you might as well call forever. All remaining structures might even dissolve into single particles that will be pushed away from each other by an ever-growing empty space. Imagine a whole universe with just a single lonely particle traveling through nothingness. This is the final state, the true end, the big freeze, or near death, a completely featureless, cold, and eternally expanding universe. Nothing will ever be able to happen again. Forever. Whew, that was a bummer. What else could happen? What else could happen? 2. Increasing dark energy. Big Red. What if dark energy gets stronger? In this case, empty space won't just win over matter, it will literally rip into pieces. In the Big Freeze scenario, matter lost the war but won some battles. But here, matter wins nothing. Dark energy is growing stronger over time, overcoming the pull of gravity and creating new empty space at smaller and smaller distances. In this scenario, things will escalate quickly. It could start as early as 20 billion years from now. First, dark energy will create empty space between individual galaxies. Our galaxy will leave its local cluster and begin to drift alone in a rapidly inflating and ever darker cosmos. Some billion years later, empty space starts to push between individual stars, dissolving the galaxy. If you live on a planet in a star system, the night sky will start looking sad and gloomy, as other stars are pushed too far away to be seen. A few million years after the sky turns dark, dark energy starts to create empty space inside star systems. Your planet is pushed away from its star.
Honestly though,
All life in the
I
universe
didn't
freezes to
enjoy,
death. There's not much time left as a few months later,
admittedly,
dark
I
energy
didn't
is creating
enjoy
empty space
the
inside
post-game
solid
and the
objects.
fact that it felt
Stars,
mandatory.
neutron stars,
But
planets,
you took
asteroids,
away the fact that it
solid
felt mandatory.
is being
It was a
ripped
great
to pieces.
post-game.
If you're on a spaceship,
One that I
you'll
would
have
have
a short
thoroughly
time before
enjoyed
you
if it
leave
weren't for the
Mars.
fact that I felt rather
Later,
obligated
if
to
an
do
atom is
it.
destroyed, as new space is being created so furiously that electrons and nuclei are separated. Now the universe has just a fraction of a second left. In this final moment, only dying black holes remain, drained and defeated by dark energy. They're tiny, septillions of times smaller than an atom, and they explode with the power of a trillion supernovae in a trillionth of an octillionth of a second. Finally, the very fabric of reality is torn to its core, obliterating space-time itself. The Big Rip. Space and time have lost their meanings, making it impossible to predict what will happen next. 3. Decreasing dark energy. Big Crunch. Poor matter. But there is one scenario where it wins. If the strength of dark energy decreases with time, and if this reduction is strong enough, the pull of gravity will win, and all the things in existence will move towards each other, unfortunately, making the universe collapse into itself. No one knows when this might begin, but it could be as soon as a few 100 million years. What will it look like? As the universe begins to contract over millions of years, galaxies and galaxy clusters approach each other until they eventually collide. They're mostly made of empty space, so a collision is like the gentle merger of two planets. At any rate, first galaxies galaxies and later individual stars get closer and closer. As the universe goes on collapsing, you might worry about stars and planets eventually crashing against each other. This will happen, but it's not your worst problem. If space itself shrinks, this also concentrates all the radiation emitted in the past by all the stars, supernovae, and quasars that ever existed. Now, empty space is filled with radiation. The dark nothing between stars is heating up, making life unpleasant and then impossible as planets just burn. Slowly at first, then rapidly, space gets as hot as it was after the Big Bang. Stars are pretty hot, but now the space around them is hotter. They're literally boiled from the outside. As the universe collapses into itself, all galaxies and all stars merge into a single ball of hot plasma. The Big Crunch is complete. From here on, there are two possibilities. Either the universe will collapse completely into a singularity, a point of zero size and infinite density, without space and time, the way it might have been before the Big Bang. Or the universe could bounce back, restarting the cosmic expansion, creating a new baby universe. Somewhat poetic, really. Everything died, but everything is reborn. But to be clear, we have zero evidence that this has happened before or when in the future. So what will happen? Most scientists think that dark energy will stay constant, so the likely fate of the universe is heat death, eternal cold, and utter boredom. Which seems sad, but has a huge upside. In this scenario, we get to have the universe for the longest. It gives us trillions of years to expand, jump from star to star, maybe even from galaxy to galaxy. We might even find a way to keep consciousness around forever. We don't know. So we just have to wait and see, and make the most of the amazing universe we have right now. Hey you, why don't you stick around for a bit longer? We want to tell you about something that changed Kurzgesagt forever. Kurzgesagt started out as a small-scale passion project, but creating animated science videos that are free for everyone doesn't pay the bills.
I'm a romantic, so I'm of the idea that the world, after the heat death, the universe just resets.
It was tough, but our dream of inspiring people all around the world kept us going. Then in 2016, everything changed. Kurzgesagt's founder,
I like the idea of the world just being one big cycle.
That would extend beyond the digital YouTube cosmos.
One big depressing and painful cycle that feels more like a straight line. As Finn the Human says. Oh, I can't avoid any of these fights.
Kurzgesagt Human Era Calendar. It establishes a new year zero to include all people and cultures around the world. This new year zero, roughly 12,000 years ago, signifies a time when humans first started working together on a larger scale, laying the foundation for modern society and eventually our future ahead of us. The first Human Era Calendar was a huge success. It sold out within a few hours and inspired thousands of burbs around the globe. Every year since then, we've created a new edition of the Human Era Calendar, each one more spectacular and successful than the last. It has enabled us to grow our team, improve our video quality and research standards, and still release our videos for free for everyone. This year's calendar is extra special. Join us as we conduct a series of space experiments to see how they would affect the development of life. What would a creature living near an orange dwarf look like? Could life still exist after a supernova explosion? And what the hell is this? Join us in 12,024 and find out. And of course you can also use it to plan humanity's next step towards greatness. To celebrate our most glorious calendar yet, we've prepared a few spectacular limited deals for you. Thank you so much for being a part of our story and for coming together every year to make all of this possible. See you in 12,024.
Oh, hell yeah. That's gonna be 14 hits. 12, that's still good. Boom. have waited a little longer. Oh well. Carry. Ready to get paralyzed again? Fuck. Running out of decoys. Oh boy. Come on, reflect could have come sooner. Oh well. What am I doing? I'm an idiot. Why did I fucking walk down? Oh my god. I have to fight Karen again. Hello again, Carrie. just get paralyzed this time. Stop targeting baby, you sons of dicks.
Biggest questions facing pretty much every classic video game now is if it holds up in the modern day. There are some games that are great for the
Well, I
time,
wasn't
but
expecting
end up falling
lightning.
short for people who play them nowadays because so many gameplay elements within older games don't really feel good for most people play
Fuck
games
yes.
today. I've recently been on a quest with the goal of beating every Zelda game, and I recently decided it would be a good idea to go all the way back to the original, The Legend of Zelda. The reason for that entire long monologue in the beginning of the video is because The Legend of Zelda is a very old game, and so a lot of the elements within the game itself have to be judged with this in mind. It is also important for the video to talk about whether or not this game is actually worth playing anymore, or if you might as well ignore it. So with that, let's talk about The Legend of Zelda. When you first touch the game and move around, one of the first things you're going to do is die, and upon death, you're going to be greeted with a death screen that seems standard even for today, and the reason for that is because this was actually the first console to have a proper save function. I hear all about how Ocarina of Time changed the game with Z-locking and 3D graphics. I hear all the time about how Breath of the Wild revolutionized the Zelda series, but I only recently just found out that the original Zelda was one of the first games to ever have a save feature. Pretty cool. This is just one of the many examples showing you just how old this game is. Another less fortunate example of how old this game is would be the combat system. The reason you're gonna die right after loading up the game isn't because the combat system takes some getting used to, but it's because this game is ridiculously hard. The combat is very limiting and there isn't much the player can do to switch it up. Most combat relies on getting really close to an enemy, trying to stab them, and hoping that they don't turn around to quickly destroy you. The problem is that I felt like I was just betting my life every time I attacked an enemy because there were times that the enemies could just turn around and attack me, and Link isn't even fast enough to get away from them, so you just kinda have to accept your fate and lose a third of your health. It doesn't help that the map is entirely open, so the game doesn't even bother trying to balance the enemies, and you could be fighting an enemy that does 2 parts of damage while you only have 3 hearts. I remember there was this one time that I came across a Lynel in the middle of nowhere, and it shot long-range projectiles that killed me in 3 hits, maybe 2, and a couple minutes later I came across a blue Lynel. It does get more damage. It sounds like this wouldn't be that much of a problem, but literally every single enemy in this game sucks to fight, bro. Even the easy enemies like the Octoroks become tiresome after a while because you end up spending your entire time trying to maneuver around and attack the enemy, only to get rewarded with nothing most of the time. I think the combat would have been a lot better if the enemies would actually consistently drop hearts or rubies. At least that would give the player an incentive to actually kill enemies in the overworld instead of running past all of them. Link in this game is very fragile and dies very quickly, so a lot of the time it's not even worth taking a fight with a regular enemy because of the risk of going from full health to death in 0.5 seconds. Whenever Link is at full health, he's able to send out projectiles with his sword, but unlike modern Zelda games where this is a small convenience, it's crucial in this game if you want to quickly cover enemies. The problem is that, like I mentioned earlier, every enemy does way too much damage, so your ability to actually take advantage of this is ripped away from you from the moment you get hit. The odds of you recovering to full health after getting hit by a bunch of enemies are slim without a potion, so a potion is really your only option. They cost over 60 rupees each. Future Zelda games seem to improve on this by adding a bunch of pods and easy enemies everywhere which drop hearts and other stuff to aid the player, but unfortunately, I said future Zelda games. When we are talking about those, I really do dislike the combat system in this game, and I think that there are so many solutions that could improve it. The biggest problem and the most obvious issue is that the player doesn't really get any ranged options until later in the game, so everyone is forced to use this tiny stick as their weapon for the majority of the game. Even when you do get ranged weapons late in the game, they don't do nearly as much damage as the swords do, which means that your only reliable option, even later in the game, is fighting with this stick. It would be really cool to see the original Legend of Zelda game get a remake, perhaps with improved combat, because this was one of the biggest problems that
They've
I had
remade
with this
almost
game.
every game now except for the first.
It's a
And the second.
problem. Simple solutions like making enemies drop more hearts, giving the player longer range, making the enemies slower. All of these things could exponentially improve the combat, which is
Here it fucking comes. This game has been a great and wonderful ride, but alas, my life can't revolve around this game forever. So I just want to try, but I know it's not gonna work. Woo! I'm already pretty fucked. Oh, nice! They just force it to be allowed. That's good, I guess. We're gonna fucking make do with this. This guy's smart. I need to take care of the robot first. It's alright if the dragon dies here, this is the final fight. Woo! Hey shit ass, check this out. I'm pretty sure if I had the Geomancer, I'd still be able to insta-kill this guy. Oh my god! Woo! Well, that was epic. Unfortunately, V3 fucking died. She ain't actually dead though. Stupidly enough, for Chaos, Mr. Vital Organ. Right, so if you guys don't remember, Teostra is a fucking time mage. By the time V3 and the gang finally beat Chaos once again, they finally meet back up and stuff, and they're all nice and happy, and then they realize they're stuck in time, but then they actually weren't, because Teostra is a fucking master of time now and sends them right back to the future. So yeah, they're ready for the next game, which is Dragon Quest III. Hell yeah. Thanks for sticking through me playing through this game a whole ass second time. It is well and truly done for real now. Who the fuck is Jane? No wait, seriously, who the fuck is Jane? And with them having, with Guild Uri once again using the power of love to save the world and save time itself as well, it seems. Twice. The guild sets off for once again another fun, less beef-filled adventure. Hell yeah. This was all being recorded, right? I hope so. Otherwise I'll be real pissed. The Light Warriors returned from their journey back in time 2,000 years. The memories stored deep in their hearts will protect the world. Never forget the good and true. Idiotic Garland. I haven't played off the Final Fantasy games, but what's with all the final villains ultimately always losing thanks to their own stupidity and trying to mess with time? I know pretty much the final boss for Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles and Final Fantasy Ring of Fate and Crystal Chronicles Echoes of Time. Spoilers, I guess. But yeah, the same thing happens to them as what happened to Garland here. Them going back in time to try to change fate, but ultimately them trying to change their fate was what led to their initial fate in the first place. Get to see this the end once again. Alright, there's nothing else. There's nothing unlocked. There's no you can now play as Luigi or whatever. That truly is everything Final Fantasy Renaissance has to offer. For now. If the game gets an update, I don't think I'll be recording it. I might eat those words. But for now, I'm well and done with recording stuff for Final Fantasy Renaissance. I don't like Final Fantasy as a whole. The first game is special to me because I've always been a sucker for character creation, and especially party creation. There's plenty of games that let you make characters, but very few that make you create parties. Which is why games like Disgaea, Final Fantasy, obviously, and then what was that game? Labyrinth of Galeria, and then recently Etrian Odyssey. Anyway, yeah, it's fucking 24 a.m. right now. I really should go to bed, so I'm gonna go now.